The film starts with a girl being killed in a slaughterhouse. Her body was found the next day. Godam follows Deni closely. Deni gets kidnapped by the killer. Can he save her before the killer attacks and kills her? Keep watching to find out what happens. The film began in a slaughterhouse where a girl was tied to a bed. She screamed loudly and begged to be let go. The killer lowered the upper part of the bed, took a square, and cut off the girl's head from her torso. The next day, the police found her dead body in the middle of the city. Her mother identified her by a mole under her foot and started crying. The scene then shifted to Godam, who was sitting in his car and listening to the radio. A program was on, where Deni was interviewing people. She was talking to Shweta, a psychiatrist from Coimbatore. Deni asked the doctor about the serial killings happening in the city. So far, girls had been kidnapped and their headless bodies found the next day. The killer left the heads in public places. The doctor explained that the killer was a psychopath who kept the heads as trophies. None of the victims were sexually assaulted. The killer only decapitated them. The next day, the killer placed another severed head in a box. In another scene, Godam followed Deni with Raja in a library. Deni went to a plant nursery, where Godam had already arrived. Deni bought a cactus plant. Deni attended her friend's engagement ceremony. Godam was there too, following her. Deni saw Godam and asked her friend about him. Her friend said he was a friend. Deni thought Godam had followed her and pretended to be blind to gain sympathy. She got angry, grabbed Godam's collar and tried to confront him. Godam stood quietly. Deni, thinking he was acting innocent, dragged him. Unaware of the stairs, Godam, actually blind, fell off the stage. After the function, she apologized to him and praised his song. She asked him how he always managed to follow her everywhere. He revealed that he paid $500 to her office boy and $2,000 to her housemaid for her schedule. Godam then told her that he was going to a place the next day and didn't tell anyone about it. She challenged him, saying if he found out where she was going the next day and met her there, she would accept his love and invite him to her birthday. He got happy and found out about the place from clues on her radio show. He discovered it was a railway station. The next evening, Deni waited for Godam at a small deserted train station. An unknown person arrived and made Deni unconscious. While unconscious, Deni saw Godam coming. Godam reached the station and from her cigarette understood that Deni was there. He called out to her, but as he got no reply, he sensed something was wrong. The police arrived after he called them and started questioning Godam. The police asked how he knew it was Deni. He said, "Yes, sir, Deni came here to meet me." The police asked why in such a deserted place. Godam explained that on the radio show, she gave clues about the place, and he came there. In another scene, the killer had tied Deni to a bed. After some time, the killer came and started lowering the upper part of Deni's bed. The killer picked up his chopper and attacked her, but stopped because there was no fear on Deni's face. The killer asked, "Are you not scared that I am going to kill you?" She replied, "No, because this will be your last murder." The killer said it was his birthday, and that Godam would find her within 7 days. He left her and went away, accepting her challenge. In another scene at a petrol pump, the killer gave her a chocolate to eat which made her faint. He took her to the slaughterhouse and beheaded her in front of Deni. Seeing this, Deni started crying. The killer told her to let Godam find her and come there because he wanted to cut Godam's head and give it to her. The next day, the police found a dead body near a lake, and Godam and his friend also arrived. Godam tried to find out if the body was Deni's, but the police chased him away. Godam went to Dr. Shweta for help, but she told him she couldn't assist him. Believing Deni was still alive, he requested the police to find her as soon as possible. The SP pushed Godam out of the station. In the police station, a constable felt pity for Godam and told him, "Son, I cannot help you with this. The police have been investigating this killer for 1.5 years. Do one thing, ask for help from Sub-Inspector Kamala, who was investigating this case from the beginning." Godam went to Kamala's house to ask for help. Kamala had been investigating this case in the past, but after an incident, she had become handicapped. He requested Kamala's help, but Kamala refused because she was now handicapped and also going through depression. Meanwhile, the police continued their investigation. Later, Kamala agreed to help Godam and went to his house. Kamala told him, "This case is very old. It is over, so I need the investigation files." To get the files, Godam went to the police station at midnight. Godam sneaked in using his phone's camera because Kamala was guiding him from outside. Godam somehow managed to reach the record room secretly, but was caught by the constable. The constable understood Godam's situation, so he dropped some records of the investigation and gave them to Godam. Godam and Kamala started studying all the victims from the records. They discovered that the last 3 victims were kidnapped during the day, and their watches were left on the road. Deni and Godam went to the victims' houses, started inquiring, and solved every kidnapping. There was a garbage bin at a distance of 10-20 feet. Kamala interrogated some children playing nearby. One of the children said he had seen the girl going with a cute dog that day, but nobody knew about the kidnapping happening in broad daylight. Godam explained that the killer used to put his dog down on the ground and stand at a distance. The girl would pick it up after seeing the dog drop while walking on the road, and the killer standing at a distance would tell her what to do. When the girl took the dog to him, the killer would kidnap her secretly. Kamala said, "There would be many dogs with fennel and Pims in this city. It is almost impossible to find him. All our efforts have been wasted." But Godam replied, "Nothing has been wasted. We will tell this to the police, and they will create awareness in the city so that these murders stop." The next day, a girl was driving into the city in her car. A dog came in front of her car. The girl got out of the car and woke up the driver. The killer, standing at a distance, called out and requested the girl to put the dog in the back, but the girl said, "Sorry, sir. I read on Twitter that a killer kidnaps by using this method." When he tried to kidnap her, she started running and got back into her car. The killer understood that his trick was revealed, so he went to a hacker to find the IP address and email ID of that tweet. He got the IP address and killed the hacker. Using the IP address, the killer went to the house of the girl who had escaped that morning. He killed the girl and took her dead body to his slaughterhouse, where he cut off her head in front of Deni. The killer told Deni, "You were right, Godam is looking for you." Meanwhile, the killer tied a long chain to Deni's leg so she could go to the bathroom. Deni came out of the room for the first time and went to the bathroom. She saw 2 more locker rooms. In the first locker room, there was a policeman's dead body, and in the second, there was an elderly woman who was still alive. The woman told her she used to be the killer's teacher at the orphanage. One day she saw the clerk masturbating, so she beat the killer 60 times a day for a year. One day, in anger, the killer attacked his teacher with a blade. The policeman was the one who brought him to the orphanage. Godam and Kamala deduced that the psycho must be a rich man who owns pig farms because of the smell from the decayed bodies of the murdered girls. Realizing that Godam was getting closer to him, the psycho went on a killing spree. Godam, Kamala, and their associates visited and questioned the owners of pig farms in the area, but failed in their attempts. Depressed, Godam went to his house and stayed there alone. Finally, Raja went to a small farm. An elderly man was sitting in the office who was hard of hearing. Raja asked him about the farm, but the elderly man couldn't say anything, so he returned. The police were following him. They decided to go to that farm, and after some time, the officer went directly to the farm. There, the killer was feeding his pigs. The officer was a little angry with him, but the killer clicked him and made him unconscious. After making him unconscious, he brought him to the slaughterhouse. Before dying, the officer requested to sing a song of Van Raja. The killer gave him some time, and the officer hummed the song. Then the killer killed him too, putting his head in a cage in public to challenge the police. That night, Godam stood on his roof. A car stopped in front of Godam's house, but no one came out. Godam understood that this was the killer. Godam came down from his house and stood in front of the gate. The killer approached in his car and lowered the window. Godam's friend Raja was in the car and started running away. Raja followed him, but the killer ran fast into a bush and escaped. Raja got out of his car and searched for him, but couldn't find the killer. Raja came back and called Godam, but then the killer attacked Raja from behind and stabbed him in the stomach. Godam had already picked up the call, so Raja was about to find out the model and number of the car when the killer cut his neck. The next day, Godam mourned his friend's death and planned to drop his investigation due to the number of deaths. Later, Kamala revealed she had prior notice that the killer had gone to a college function. With regained hope, they all went back to the college and looked at the recordings from that day. They saw a guy wearing a lot of clothes, always hiding from the camera. A teacher from the school was sitting next to him, so they questioned him. The teacher said the guy was 28 to 30 years old and that he had offered him popcorn. While buying popcorn, the teacher noticed that his right forearm was cut. Then Godam and Kamala went to a nearby BMW center and asked for information. From there, they got a lot of information about the killer. Godam had measured the height of the killer's car and had a record that the killer did not have a right-hand forefinger. He and Kamala took the killer's address and name. They found out that the killer's name was Angulimala. They also found a map of the farm in his office and decided to go there alone. They thought if the police got involved, the culprit could escape. That very night, Godam and Kamala went to the farm together. She guided Godam while he drove the car. The next day was Sunday, which meant it was the culprit's day. If Godam did not save Deni by midnight, the killer would kill him. At the farm, the killer took Deni out of the room and brought her to a ball, where he tied her to a chair. On the other side, he had also tied up the teacher. Deni felt the killer might reveal some details, but after some time, the killer appeared in a school uniform. He began crying like a mad person, pleading, "Teacher, don't kill me, don't kill me," and apologizing for his crimes like a child. The killer prepared to kill both the teacher and Deni. He said, "The police constable killed me before putting me in the orphanage, and then picked up a knife to kill them." Outside, Godam accidentally hit a wire, and an alarm started ringing inside. The killer began attacking Godam like a madman. Godam managed to get into a dark storeroom, and despite searching for him, the killer could not find Godam and began to cry. Godam then touched the killer from behind and said that he had not come to kill him, but to save Deni. When Godam grabbed the killer's hand from behind, the killer turned around and stabbed him with a knife. Godam then pulled out a stun gun from his pocket, made the killer unconscious, and locked his legs. He found Deni and gave her the ring she had dropped at the station. The killer crawled over and attacked them. Godam and Deni started running, but the killer cried like a child from behind, saying, "Teacher, don't leave me." Seeing the tears in the killer's eyes, Deni felt pity for him and asked Godam for the locker key so the killer could escape. She threw the key in front of the teacher's locker room, a little away from the killer, to buy them some time. Both of them ran away while the killer rushed towards the key. However, the teacher in the locker room grabbed the key first and ate it. He entered the locker room, ripped open the teacher's stomach, and took out the key to unlock himself. The killer ran outside to catch them, but it was too late. They had already fled in the car. After this, the killer also ran away. The next day, during a press conference when Deni was asked about the killer, she said, "You see him as a killer, but I see him as a small child. In these 7 days, I saw a lonely orphan child inside him with a delicate heart full of wounds. If I were his mother or sister, I would have loved him and cared for him, giving him lots of love so he could become a good person." The killer was watching this interview on TV. Seeing someone's love and sympathy for him for the first time, he finally realized his mistakes. The movie showed him jumping from a high cliff, and it ended there.